This video has major spoilers for Game of Thrones. Hey everybody, this is Necroxis, as usual. This video is 100% unscripted, and it might come off as just kind of a rant, but I did want to bring it up because mostly I was just tired of flooding my Twitter with arguments about Game of Thrones. So I want to talk a little bit about Game of Thrones, now that it's officially over. I guess especially about Season 8, which is primarily the focus of this video. And I want to talk about the backlash to Season 8. And I want to talk about internet culture and armchair criticism. And how, to me, it almost seems like it's ruining the concept of constructive criticism. So, presumably, if you've watched Game of Thrones, and most people have, I know some haven't, but a lot of people, most have. Season 8 has been very divisive. There's been a lot of people. I would say maybe even the majority of people who didn't like a lot of parts of it. And it frustrates me because I had problems with Season 8, of course. I had problems with the entire show. I mean, you can always find some kind of critical component to anything. Even, there's nothing that's perfect. Even the book series. And I've read the book series. I'm almost finished reading it again. Sorry, I was looking up on my bookshelf because I forgot what book I was on. I hadn't read in a while. I've almost finished the second read-through of it. I stopped. I wanted to finish before the season began, but I couldn't make it. And there's stuff about the books that I have problems with. But it's almost like we can't discuss anything critical about it because people just want to hate things so unambiguously and so generally and so vaguely that the constructive criticism can never break through the wall of the negative zeitgeist around discussion around this season. We can't have discussions like, Jaime sleeping with Brienne was gratuitous fan service. However, this is my personal opinion. I think mostly what they did with his character at the end was perfect, and it made complete sense with what this character had gone through. Going back to Cersei at the very end after hearing Sansa tell him to his face, your sister's gonna die. Him going back to the woman he loved, the person that he couldn't give up, even though he knows and acknowledges that she's a horrible person. That's a very realistic trait. That happens in real life. And the idea that people are just screaming, they just ruined his character and his whole arc was invalidated. I can't even... It's infuriating to me that we can't discuss the pros and cons of something because people have a visceral dislike of what happens in a storyline, so they just dismiss the entire story. There's a huge difference between, I don't like this, and this is bad writing. And don't get me wrong, I think there are some things in Game of Thrones, in Season 8, that are bad writing. Jaime sleeping with Brienne, I think, is bad writing. I think it's fan service. And I've always been against fan service writing. If you've heard me talk about it at any point, Clegane Bowl, I hated. I've always hated. It's always been fan service that got canonized. I hate that idea. The fight itself was cool, but I just don't like the concept in general. With Warcraft, I talk about it all the time. And some other franchises, I talk about fan service. But we can't even have this discussion between what small parts are good or bad about a subject because the frothing, mindless rage of the internet just says, I didn't like certain things, so therefore it's all bad. I can't even get to the point of, yeah, sure, they could have drawn out Dany's madness a little bit more, but in general, I think they set it up very well. But because people equate, I don't like this, with this is bad writing, it's just, Dany would never turn, this is bad writing, Season 8's ruined, they ruined one of my favorite characters, everything sucks and I hate it, and it's bad. And for Dany specifically, I've had so many discussions with so many people, some of which absolutely refuse to acknowledge that this turn was coming, and other people who, I'll say the people who agree with me, or at least are more receptive to this opinion, people like Howie. Him and I are generally on the same page about Game of Thrones, Season 8. I haven't talked to him about the finale yet, but we had a pretty long discussion about Daenerys and how we both were pretty much satisfied with where that character went, based on all of the setup that they've been doing since literally the beginning of the show. I'm literally in the beginning of the books. I'm sorry, everybody, if you are upset that she became the Mad Queen, or I guess Emilia Clarke doesn't like calling it the Mad Queen. I'm going to call her the Dark Queen, I think is what I'll start saying, because even Emilia Clarke, and she's under no contractual obligation to do this, but she's been going pretty hard at the people who have been hating on the writers for what happens to Daenerys. And she accurately, much like Kit Harington, and some others, have been accurately pointing out that they've been setting this up from the very beginning. And in that moment when she turns into the Dark Queen, what you're supposed to feel is, wow, maybe I've just been ignoring all the bad parts of her because we've been rooting for her to fight all of these unambiguously evil people. Like slavers, the Dothraki, the greedy merchants of Karth, the noblemen of Meereen, all these people who are presented in the narrative as unambiguously evil. We cheer on Daenerys torturing them and killing them and feeding them to her dragon, or crucifying them in the most horrific, torturous death possible. We cheer it on because we're told that these people are unambiguously evil. And for some people, not me, I mean, I've been expecting the Dark Queen turn the whole time. I feel like if anyone has paid attention to the story, and if you were actually paying attention in an objective sense, I kind of feel like you should have saw this coming. But every time she would do stuff like that, I'd be like, man, this is a cool moment. But a little voice in the back of my head is, this is going down a dark path. Dany's going down a dark path again. And it's just, I can't even have this discussion about all of these moments that they bring it up in the show, because people just have this knee-jerk emotional inherent reaction of, this is bad, and they ruined it, and fuck the show, and fuck the writers, D&D are the worst ever, I hate them, and it's just, I just want to reach my hand through the internet and just collectively backhand all of these people. That isn't to say that there aren't people who are critical of the show, and are trying to make these kind of points. There are people who have made thought-out, well-done responses, critically analyzing the show, and that's fine, that's great. I'm not saying it don't exist. However, I think it's uncontestedly true that they are completely drowned out by the people who are just mindlessly saying this is the worst thing ever. And it blows my mind because it's gotten to such a fever pitch. It was like the worst last episode, but now with the finale, it's kind of twisted into somehow even a worse version, like a cynically arrogant version of what was going on in the last episode, because I've been watching and looking at online discussions after the finale, and people are spitefully trying to poke holes in things where, to me, I look at that and I go, were you just not paying attention then? For example, people saying, oh, I guess Jon Snow being a Targaryen went nowhere, there was no point for it. And I see that criticism and I go, what are you talking about? That whole plot point set up the last conflict of the story. Jon versus Daenerys was set up by him being a Targaryen. How can you possibly say that it didn't go anywhere? What are you talking about? It set into motion the final downfall of Daenerys. It was the last thing that sent her over the edge, between her closest friend and advisor getting killed, 2 of her dragons that she sees as children getting killed, Jorah dying, all of these other horrible things that have happened to her, and then Jon's heritage, and then rejecting her romantic love. That was the final straw. How can you possibly say that didn't go anywhere? I feel like when people are saying it didn't go anywhere, what they actually mean is Jon Snow was a Targaryen, but he didn't end up on the throne, so therefore that plot point didn't go anywhere. Just because what you want to happen in the story didn't happen doesn't make the writing bad. You can dislike it, and there can be bad writing that happens in that case, but inherently not having your headcanon come true doesn't automatically make a plot point bad. It's there's so many things in the where they're choosing the next king. I see people saying, "Oh well, the writing is just shit. Why didn't they just pick Jon?" And I'm just like, are you paying attention? Do you not have critical understanding, critical thinking skills? Combined with the fact that in the next scene Tyrion literally says it, If they would have picked Jon to be king, the Dothraki and the Unsullied would have reignited the conflict because she fucking killed their queen. It's just, like, we can't have critical discussion because people are so upset irrationally in most of the cases, I would say, I think, in this situation, that they're now resorting to just complete crazy nonsense where sorry, I just got a text message. The kind of complete, just crazy nonsense where they're now trying to pretend that obviously explained things are plot holes just because they're upset. And it's like the last few years of the internet has just... Maybe it's because I'm getting older now. I don't know. It could be. Maybe it's because I remember the time... I'm old enough to remember a time when the internet wasn't a thing. And I was a kid, but I can vividly remember that time. And now there's a new generation where they've grown up entirely on the internet. But I can remember a time where these kinds of frothing outrage mobs just weren't a thing. Or if there were, the internet didn't facilitate all of them meeting up and becoming even worse. It's like a cycle of people telling each other the same thing over and over and over. It's very common in political circles too, which is why the politics in the United States and around the world, but especially in the US, has gotten so bad. It's just people telling each other the same thing over and over and over and over again, and absolutely refusing to look at anyone else who disagrees. I'm not saying I'm above that. I fail at that all the time. But the older that I get, the more I'm trying to work on not being like that. And I fail at it. I fail at it constantly. You can point out that I look like a huge hypocrite because I nitpick everything about World of Warcraft. And I think you're right to a large extent. In my defense, I would try to argue that I don't generally say everything's terrible. I've pretty frequently talked about how much I like the cinematics in Battle for Azeroth, how much I like the music, how much I like the ambiance of the zones and the art. A lot of the allied races, I talked about a really good character arc in Catherine. I don't just blatantly hate everything. I dislike more than I like, so I bring it up more. I bring up my criticisms more than my likes. But I could see a case being made that, Necroxis, you're just being a hypocrite here. And I just want to be clear, I'm not saying Game of Thrones Season 8 was perfect. It probably is my least favorite of the seasons. But we can't even have a fucking discussion on what is good and what is bad because everyone's so busy in a giant circle jerk, frothingly mad about how everything they hate and everything's bad because what they liked and what they wanted to happen didn't happen. It drives me fucking insane because I'm someone who, before this season, I loved discussing A Song of Ice and Fire in Game of Thrones. And I still love the Song of Ice and Fire in Game of Thrones series. I'm splitting the book and the movie into two different ones. There's the Venn diagram of them is almost a complete circle, but it's not entirely, because obviously the books are not done yet, and the show has come out. And the show has finished. But I used to love discussing it. I would discuss it with my friends and my family when we would watch it. Like we always came together and had big, not huge parties, or not even parties, but the whole family would come on and we would make a really cool, like a really nice dinner and have a really good whole meal around it, and then we would all go watch Game of Thrones and we'd all discuss it. And then afterwards, I would love going online and seeing people talk about it. And there were complaints back then, and it sprinkled throughout, but it was nothing nearly like it was now. I used to really love watching people react to it online, because it's something that I genuinely love, and it's fun to watch other people love the same thing you do. That's why reaction channels are so big. But with Season 8, there's just been, I think ultimately, I think at the bottom of it all, at the end of it all, the problem is people for 20 years, for 20 plus years, these book series has been out for over 20 years. I don't remember the exact date, but the first one came out, I think, in 96 or around there. But people have built up expectations of what they want and think will happen for all these characters. And if the show ever dared to do something or lead a character down what I would argue is the proper character path, and they did something or something was done to them that the people on the internet felt like for 20 years this isn't what would happen, it became such a bitter, knee-jerk, emotional hatred in its reaction that it's tainted a big part of what I love about the series. I really can't even bring myself to look at discussions anymore. And I want to talk about the critical things about this season. I want to talk about stuff that went wrong or what they could have done better. But I also want to talk about the good stuff. Like the cinematography is fucking amazing this season. Like, there's so many incredible shots where you could just take a still image, print it out, and make it a fucking painting if you framed it. You know, like in the third episode, when Dany and the Night King's dragon, and when Dany and Undead Viserion are fighting, but they get above the cloud line and you can see the moon in the corner. It's like, or in the last episode when Dany was walking down the dais down the stairs and you see Drogon's wings up from behind her. There's so many good scenes. Or in the last episode, in episode 5, there's a moment when Cersei is fleeing and she's by herself already, and she gets to the room with the big map of Westeros on the floor. There's like a brief moment where she pauses and she's standing literally on the spot where King's Landing is, and in the background you can see the keep falling behind her, and I'm like, oh, the cinematography here is fucking amazing. Like, we can't even discuss this because people are so butthurt about their stupid cliched headcanons not coming true. Like, I really don't want this to be like a bitter rant at everybody, but what the fuck did you want to happen with the storyline? Did you want the cliched fantasy ending where the chosen one, Jon Snow, stops the fallen chosen one, Daenerys, and becomes the king, and everyone loves him, and everyone gets what they want at the end? You wanted that cliched fantasy ending that's been done in hundreds of thousands of other fantasy narratives or ever? Like, I'm not saying it's good because it, and this has been tainted by people in this community who are upset. But I'm not saying it's good because it subverts expectations. But I'm saying all the characters' arcs that have been built up, you really want to just invalidate all this because you want a happy ending? What show have you been watching for 10 years almost? What book series have you been reading for 20 years? There's Tyrion they even fucking have Tyrion say that if you're expecting a happy ending, you come to the wrong place. What are you expecting? Like, it's crazy to me that people say they love Game of Thrones because of how much it breaks fantasy tropes, but then so many people are upset that the ending doesn't turn out to be the most fantasy trope ending ever. Like, it goes nuts. It drives me nuts, and it feels like people are just saying that they like the show for this reason, but in reality, they just wanted the happy ending where everyone gets what they want. And people are saying that, oh, it was a happy ending anyway because the Starks all got what they wanted. Jon didn't really get what he wants. I mean, I guess he kind of had a nicer ending because he didn't want to be king, but he also got banished and couldn't be with his family. Yes, sure, Sansa got what she wanted at the end. She became Queen of the North. She went through 6 seasons of total brutality. The idea that people can just say Sansa got what she wanted and never progressed, it just blows my fucking mind. Do you remember this character at the beginning? Where all she believed in were like these flowery knights and princesses, and she lived in a fairy tale world because she was royalty. And now she's like a hardened, cynical politician who understands how the world really works, but she managed to manipulate the situation to her benefit. How can you say there has been no character arc? It's like, it drives me fucking bananas. Sure, she got what she wanted at the end. She went through a total hell. Bran's not even Bran anymore. He's the three-eyed raven. Arya went through terrible situations, and we really never even knew what she truly wanted. So going west of Westeros to explore what's next, that's a pretty fucking cool thing. It's also something a lot of people expected would happen, and what a lot of people wanted, but you don't hear people talking about that. You don't hear people saying, I'm happy that what happened with Arya happened, because we're so busy being fucking upset about Jon Snow and Daenerys getting killed. It's gonna take like a year or two before we can even have a discussion about the good and the bad things of this season, because it's just so flooded with hatred, and it drives me fucking bananas. And the only reason it bugs me so much is because, like I said, I love to discuss this stuff. Like, I'm a huge fan of analyzing why I like something or why I don't like something. It's why I almost incessantly, people could say, I think fairly, it's why I incessantly try to nitpick every single problem that I have with Battle for Azeroth, because it's not because I want other people to agree with me. Like, I don't really care if people agree with me or not. Like, I don't care if my opinions line up with the frothing rage of the internet about Game of Thrones. I want to pick apart it because I want to know what, at the very core of it, why am I not satisfied with something, or why am I satisfied with something? I just like to know that certainty for myself. And I can't do that now, because it's just, the whole discussion is just ruined. And I'll leave it off at one final thing I've heard people say. I've been accused of being a contrarian because I've been defending a lot of Season 8 of Game of Thrones against this mindless frothing rage. But then, so the accusation is, oh, you're just being a contrarian, everyone hates it, so you have to defend it. But then I have to say, if I was just trying to be a contrarian, wouldn't I also then be defending Battle for Azeroth? If the popular opinion is, and I think it is, I think, if not the majority, but then a large percentage, or the most vocal percentage of the fan base, is critical of Battle for Azeroth. If I was just trying to be a contrarian, wouldn't I be defending it? I mean, wouldn't I? I don't know. I don't know even what the point of this video is. I think it's just that I'm tired about arguing about this on Twitter, and I just wanted to spill all my thoughts out so I could feel a little better. Much like the Kingdom Hearts 3 video. Interestingly enough, the longer that the game's been out, the more people are having problems with it, which is fun. I'm not happy that it's not as good as people wanted, but it's interesting. I noticed this trend, and I'm not saying I'm like ahead of the curve, but it's more because I dive into things hardcore right out of the gate. But much like with, Warlords and Legion, which came out to pretty universal praise, which then slowly starts going down. It's interesting seeing people, who have condemned me and others like me who have been critical of things like this, slowly come to the realization that we were right on a lot of points. And again, I'm not trying to say I'm upset people don't agree with me. It's just, it's kind of self-validating in a way. But yeah, so like I was saying with the Kingdom Hearts 3 video, it's kind of just a way for me to get all my thoughts out there so I can feel better myself. Like, I don't care if I don't change anyone's opinions. I mean, from what it seems like to me, and I'm sorry if you're in this camp and you feel that's not the case and I'm just being mean to you, I'm sorry, I don't intend to, because I've genuinely tried with like over 10 people that I personally know with this topic, but the topic about Daenerys and her turn, not a single one of them would even listen to me bringing up, like, watching her brother die coldly, not caring about it, all the reasons I listened before, crucifying people in terrible ways, feeding people to her dragon, incinerating an innocent nobleman because she wanted to scare everybody else in Marine, executing the Tarleys in a horrific way instead of just taking them prisoner, all of these terrible other things she's done. And it doesn't matter, because they've already made up their mind that the turn was wrong and not warranted and unjustified. And it feels like no matter, the people were never going to change their mind. So I've kind of stopped trying to argue with people individually of why I think the turn was pretty well done. Sure, it could have been done better. Everything could have been done better, but I think it was done as well as it could have been. And I kind of feel like people who think that it wasn't just weren't paying attention. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be mean, but that's just kind of how I felt about the topic, and I just kind of wanted to stop talking about it, stop talking about Game of Thrones for a while. Just spill all my guts out, get all the downvotes in the video that I know are coming, because people don't agree and people want to just hate everything. Even though I dislike Battle for Azeroth, I went into it wanting to like it. Like, I don't want to hate something. Like, I feel sad for people who want to go into something not liking it. I wish I could like it, and I'm happy that people that like it do. But I don't want to go into something hating it. So when I leave like an episode of Season 8, and I'm like, that was pretty good. I liked a lot of that. There were some things I didn't like, but I liked it in general. And I eagerly want to go talk to people that I know or like read discussions online, and I just see just a wave of this is fucking garbage and D&D ruined the show. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. It's so sad. It's such a bummer to me. So, here's this video. Do with it what you will. I don't even know what the point of it really is. It's like a video diary, I guess, but let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Until then, stay awesome. And yeah, farewell.